Hi everyone, welcome to the Asian Arts Museum in Nice. I am Adrien Bossard, the director and curator of the museum, and it's my pleasure to welcome you in this wonderful building in Nice to show you the collections and the architecture of this museum created in 1998. And I'm going to explain to you the history of the architecture, but also the composition of the collections through a quiet visit in this building made of marble and glasses, as I like to say. And the history of the building is quite recent and begins during the 80s with the meeting between two men, very important men at the time, Pierre-Yves Trémoy, who was a French artist renowned around the world, and Jacques Médecin, who was the city mayor of Nice and the president of the Département des Alpes-Maritimes. The two protagonists decided to organize a donation to the city of Nice of 15 pieces of art, mostly from Japan. And very quickly they decided to build around this donation an incredible building made by Kenzo Tange, one of the most famous architects in the world at that time, surely the most famous Japanese architect of the 20th century. The basic principle of the architecture, decided by Pierre-Yves Trémoy and Kenzo Tange, is made of the combination of a circle and a square. Those two forms are quite important in Asia because the circle symbolizes the sky and the square symbolizes the earth. And the combination of those two forms is, by extension, a recreation of the universe. That's why the turtle is so important as an animal in Asia, because it's itself composed of those two forms. The museum is also very bright, made of glass and marble. The glass was chosen by Kenzo Tange to show the light of the Côte d'Azur because it's an important component of the territory. And the marble is a reminder of the long history of the territory, notably a reminder of the antique temples that you can find in the region. I'm in front of the monumental stairs of the museum, which is an important part of the building because it is a technical masterpiece made by Kenzo Tange, notably because it is made of a very thin layer of concrete in a spiral form, which connects the three levels of the museum. The top level is dedicated to Buddhism in Asia because this religion was identified as an element of unification of the Asian civilizations. This floor is dedicated to geographical areas which are quite important for the history of art in Asia. 4 cubes are dedicated to two mother civilizations, which are China and India. And the 2 other cubes are dedicated to daughter civilizations, Japan and Southeast Asia. The floor below is dedicated to temporary exhibitions that permit the museum to explain more precise thematics to the visitors of the establishment. We are here in the Chinese collection, and as you can see, the scenography is very simple, made of glass and metal. The scenography was designed by François Delogier during the 90s to create a proximity between the visitors and the art. In this space, we have mostly Chinese archaeological items, funerary items, and a few decorative pieces which I'm going to present to you. This Chinese bell is quite representative of the art of the Zhou dynasty, which ruled China from 1100 BC to 256 BC. It is made of bronze, and it's supposed to be percuted with a stick in the middle rectangular space. And you can see on this bell many representations which are characteristic to the Chinese arts. On the top of the piece you can see a pair of dragons, which of course is a very important symbol in Chinese civilization. But you also can see snakes on 6 levels on each part of the central rectangle. And sizzled on the other spaces of the bell, you can see hybrid snakes, which is a common motif in Chinese art. All those motifs altogether represent the essence of Chinese art at that time, and it's quite important to have this piece in the center of this cube, because visitors can have an initiation to the very basis of Chinese civilization. This Chinese chair is a very important piece of the collection. It is made mainly of roots, assembled without any nails, but with a system of tenon and mortise, which is a traditional technique in China. And this chair is quite a good example of the decoration that you are going to find in a scholar studio in China, because its form reminds the form of the mountain, and the mountain is quite important in China, and particularly in the scholar world, because it's a synthesis of the world. And in the presentation in the museum, we created a link between the 18th century and the 21st century with this porcelain plate made by a Chinese artist called Bai Ming. And Bai Ming also tried to link traditional art from China with contemporary abstraction. And it's quite interesting to put together those two pieces, because the visitors, when they see this chair, they do not really understand its purpose, because Chinese civilization is quite far from our European considerations. But with the contemporary art, they really understand why an artisan during the 18th century made this chair in this form. So it's really in the project of the museum to try to make people understand Asian art with connection between the periods. In this Chinese collection we also have a few funerary substitutes, which are called in Chinese Mingqi. Ming signifies light, and Qi signifies object. So there are in Chinese objects of light, which is quite poetic, and it's not as poetic in English. So those substitutes were supposed to be put in the tomb with the deceased, so he can continue to live a good life after death. Those two items are made of terracotta and are quite characteristic of the Han Dynasty. You can see two men, one naked, one with a costume. The naked one at first had clothes made of textile that are gone now, and the arms of the two items are now gone too. We also have a statue made of wood, dated from the same dynasty, the Han Dynasty, And wood is quite difficult to conserve in the tomb because it's a material that could disappear much more easier than terracotta. And this wood must have been found in a humid environment, and later it was preserved with modern techniques so we can present the piece in the museum. It was donated 20 years ago to the museum by a private collectioner. This is the Indian cube of the museum, with about 3,000 years of Indian art presented to the visitors. And we start with the item placed in the middle of the space. And this piece is called an anthropomorph because it's the first human representation in Asian art in India. And the form is quite simple, very symmetrical, with a head without any representation of the face. And we can see very long legs going on each part, and two robust arms rolled toward the torso. The signification of this piece is quite mysterious, but it is linked to a culture, the Horde copper culture, which is quite important and quite renowned in India. And the specialists discovered in diggings a lot of pieces together. This kind of piece with the anthropomorphic form, but also raw material and also weapons. And the meaning of those discoveries is still imprecise. We have here a quite important statue of the Indian collection. It dates from the 10th century, from the Pala period, and comes from Bengal in India. The statue represents Ganesha, which is an important deity in the Hinduist pantheon. And Ganesh is the son of Shiva and Parvati and is characterized by his elephant head. And we can recognize in his hand a few things. You can see a cobra in the two top hands. A rosary is here. You have a tambourine here. And because the elephant is gourmet, you can also see a radish here and a bowl of modaka, which are Indian cookies. And with the last hand, the deity makes the move of the dancer because he is doing the cosmic dance, which is an important dance for the equilibrium of the universe. And you can see on the lower part his vehicle, Mushika. You can see musicians, they are helping the deity to dance. This piece is a perfect illustration of the luxury of palaces in the north of India during the Mughal Empire. It dates from the beginning of the 17th century, and it's made of a very precious material, yellowish marble sculpted with refinement. This piece is called chadar, which is a part of a fountain which slows down the flow of the water. And the motif sculpted on the surface of this piece is a symmetrical amphora, which is a reminder of the liquid going on the surface of the piece. Here is the Southeast Asia room where we present this daughter civilization made of many countries and many spaces, quite complex, with a long history and a very interesting evolution of art. Of course, Angkor, this archaeological site, is surely the most famous part of this space. But we also try to present in this room the art of the Vietnam, but also the Laos. We also have in the museum Indonesian pieces of art. So we try in this space to create a connection between the mother civilization, India and China, and the southeast part of the continent. This figurine is a bronze representation of a deity from Cambodia. It is dated from the 12th century and is in the style of Angkor Wat. The deity is Prajnaparamita and is the personification of a sacred book called the Perfect Wisdom Sutra. And you can see on the main head that you have a representation of 10 other heads, which are the virtues that you have to possess to reach the nirvana. And you have 11 pairs of arms which hold an item, which are the powers of the deity, and the main arms and main hands hold the sacred book, which is personified by the representation. Those two bronze pieces are a representation of Vietnamese lion dogs dated from the 15th century, and those type of representation is linked to Vietnamese temples, and we think that they were put on top of incense burners, so the incense would go through the nose and the mouth of the two animals. And this type of object was used during particularly important ceremonies in Vietnamese temples during the 15th century. This head is a representation of Shiva, one of the most important Hinduist deities. You can recognize the deity with the third eye placed on the forehead, and the arrangement of the hair. This type of piece is quite interesting because it was an ornament of a linga kosha, which is a cover for a linga, and a linga is a schematic representation of the sex of Shiva, which is an important element in the Hinduist temple. Finally, we are in the Japan Cube, which presents, of course, pieces of art from the famous archipelago. Japan was defined as a daughter civilization because it was influenced, of course, by the continent, by the Chinese civilization, but it has also the specificity of having developed its own aesthetic, which is simple and complex at the same time. And we will start with the presentation of those two screens behind me. Those two 6-panel screens are quite important pieces of the Japanese collection of the museum. Screens are very common in Japanese architecture because they have a role in the composition of the architecture, but also in its decoration. And on the surface of those two screens made by the Tosa school at the end of the 17th century, you can see episodes of the Japanese literature painted on the books and the rolls that are commonly used to see the literature. and to read it and to see representation from it. So it's quite an important piece that illustrates the very specific approach of art and literature in the Japanese archipelago. This particular scene illustrates a book of the Japanese literature called the Heike Monogatari. This book presents the war between two Japanese clans, and in an episode of the story, the Japanese emperor is very ill and no one is able to cure the disease. And people from the palace notice that there is a very dark cloud on the top of the palace. So a samurai named Minamoto no Yorimasa takes a bow and aims an arrow to the dark cloud, and a monster called a Nue emerged of the cloud, and people understand that the monster was the origin of the illness of the emperor. This water jug is made of lacquered wood and dates from the end of the 15th century. It was used to serve hot water for tea or for meals. It is named a negoro because it was maybe created in a Buddhist temple called the Negoroji, where monks used to produce this type of object for their own use. Negoro lacquer is a very important material in Japanese art, and as you can see on the object, it is made of layers of dark lacquer on the lower part, and on the top part you have a very precious red lacquer. And the imperfections that you can see on the object, the dark going through the red, is actually part of the perfection of this type of lacquer in the Japanese way of thinking objects. In the middle of the central space of the museum, we recently put this piece because it was recently acquired by the museum last December. It is a Japanese armor made of lacquered leather, which is not the most common material for Japanese armor. And you can recognize the helmet, the mask, the chest plate, the protection of the leg, and even the shoes. This armor was in the possession of a member of the Hota clan. This information is known because you can see the emblem of the clan in different parts of the armor. And the emblem of the clan, which is called in Japanese a mon, is this kind of flower. This type of armor was not supposed to be used in a battle. It was used during ceremonies or parades, and that explains why it is in such a good condition. And it's really a chance for the museum to have this kind of impressive item in the collection of the establishment. We are now in the Buddhist rotunda of the museum, in this big circle on top of the square that we just explored a while ago. And in this circle, we have a selection of Buddhist statues which permit the team of the museum to explain a lot of things about this religion, about the Buddha figure and its representations to the visitors. And that's what we are going to do with a few examples. We have here a statue of a standing Buddha made of stone and dated from the 2nd century AD. This statue comes from the northwest of actual Pakistan, a region called Gandhara, where there was a fusion between Hellenistic art and local Indian art. And you can see on this statue the mix between the two influences. You can recognize the Buddha with two elements. The first one is the urna, this point between the eyebrows. And you can also see a bump on the top of the head, which is called the Ushnisa. The Hellenistic influence is particularly present on the face, of course, but also on the clothes, because it is the same treatment that you can see on Greek statues. And you can also see the Greek influence at the bottom of the statue with those two Hellenistic columns on each part of the 5 characters sculpted. This statue represents Duchemen Canon, which is Canon with 11 heads. Those 11 heads represent the virtues that are needed to reach the nirvana. And Canon is not a Buddha, but a bodhisattva, which is a character in this religion that can reach the nirvana, but refuse to do so, so he can help others to do it. The statue dates from the 12th century, and the 12th century corresponds to a very important period of the Japanese history, the Heian period, which is considered as a golden age in Japan history. The statue is made of Japanese wood called hinoki, lacquered and gilded. The face of the statue is very precisely represented, and the character wears a very light and well represented tunic, and he is standing on top of a lotus, a symbol of purity in Buddhist religion. And finally, we have here a crown Buddha from Myanmar, dated from the 14th century. This statue was made of teak wood and was lacquered and gilded. This sculpture is part of a group of representation of Buddhas which are wearing jewelries and crowns, and we are not quite sure of the identification of this type of representation. They could be bodhisattvas, they could be crowned Buddhas, but they also can be portraits of dead kings which became deities after they died. The right hand of the Buddha is doing the gift gesture, and the left hand on the chest symbolizes the absence of fear.